Welcome to another episode of The Art of Volunteering. I'm your host, Stormy Bell. Today, my friend who's joining us, I actually had the privilege of knowing his parents, specifically his dad, a lot longer than him. I'm very excited to have Travis Merrick on as our guest, and I think you're going to really enjoy his volunteer journey. I know that I have had fun learning about it. So, Travis, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Stormy. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. Just a little bit about Travis. Travis is a person who really finds himself drawn to volunteering, as his parents both exemplified it to him as a kid. His dad coached hockey, his mom did Futures Leaders and a women's shelter. He finds that it fills his cup. He enjoys meeting people, giving back, and feeling like he's making a difference. He works hard and is very grateful for the life he has. He feels that if he can make someone else's life better, that's reason enough to volunteer. And I adore that introduction. It captures the heart of a volunteer. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much. And I mean, it means a lot to me. I think my wife thinks I'm a bit of a crazy person at times, and all of the different things that I do. But it really it means a lot to me, and it's something I think that I can impact the world with.
That's awesome. So, as we prepare for our conversation today, I asked you about your volunteering roles, different things you've been a part of. And it was clear to me that, like, volunteering service is really in your DNA. So, that's amazing. But I love the fact that your parents modeled giving back to the community. Can you elaborate on what your volunteer journey looked like where it began, what you saw in your parents? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the funny thing is our conversation to lead into this larger conversation on the podcast really brought us memories for me. And looking back at my parents, I remember my dad being the hockey team equipment manager, and we had a little storage shed in some industrial area that I remember going to at 8 o'clock at night to get goalie pads for some other kid's team. And I would just be in the car with my dad and like, oh, why are we doing this? I was like, oh, well, unfortunately, this little guy doesn't have pads and we need to get him some pads. So we jumped in the car and went. I remember my mom, going out and, she was part of the church group. She was part of Women in Need Giving Shelter, Wings in Edmonton, Alberta. Great association, which I still actually donate to, even though my mom has passed. And that led me into Little League. So I was a Little League player, played hockey, played baseball in the summer. Now in Canada, our baseball season is not that long. So it's pretty quick. But we had the dads that were the umpires in the fields. We had, just people that were giving back. And at about 13, 14, one of the leaders of Little League came to me and says, Travis, would you like to be an umpire? And I was like, oh, that sounds great. What does that entail? I mean, it was a gray Nike sweatshirt and some Dickies work pants. They gave me the gear and sent me out there. And, you get a couple of cheeseburgers on the weekend and mom would drop me off and I'd be there all day. And that led to me all of a sudden, getting some skills, learning to deal with adults, doing all those things that come from umpiring through volunteering. Took me all the way to Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I actually got to go to the Little League headquarters. And the neat thing was that was all paid for because of my volunteering. My giving back led to them saying, hey, Travis, you've been on this journey with us for 10, 12 years. Let's send you off to get you a supervisor designation. Fast forward, another 10 years, I'm married, I have kids. Life is coming at us so quickly. And I wanted to make sure that I had a place to sort of understand what I could do in the world. I've worked from home for 17 years. I like to make the joke that I've done it since way before it was cool. Uh,
My husband says the same thing. He goes, I worked at home before it was cool. Yeah.
right? And so I've been doing it a very long time. So, but I don't see my coworkers. I only go to the office maybe once a quarter-ish. So I don't have office mates. I don't go out for those office drinks or whatnot. So volunteering gets me out in the community, gets me meeting people, gets me doing some things that are just different. And I really enjoy it. So that led me into my community association, which I felt like I could make a big difference at. That leads me to my kids' school, which of course that's just hands-on with my own family. And I grew up playing hockey, loving hockey, and we're Canadian. So I coach both my girls at hockey. And it just all those things just kind of add up. And at the end of the year, you kind of look back and go, holy smokes, I did a lot last year.
That's amazing. We have, yeah, hockey's huge. I love the fact that your girls play. That's awesome. So, very cool. So, when we were preparing for today, we talked about like what your core values are for volunteering. We mentioned in your bio, but that volunteering fills your cup. Can you just why?
So I will say we're not a very religious family. That's just straight up. This is just what it is. My mom was never passed on to me, which is perfectly fine. But I found one of those things that really kind of hit back with me was I've been very blessed. Just call it what it is. I'm in a lovely home with a wife and two children. For the most part, we've got health and happiness in our home. But I know there's a lot of people out there that don't. And one of the things that was taught to me really young is you just don't know what happens behind someone's closed doors. So they may see you at work, they may see you at school, they may see you at the hockey game. But when they go home and close their door, it may be really hard for them. And you don't know what that journey is for other people. So, what are the things that I can do to make someone's life easier, better, impacted, any of those things? So, I look at the community association, and I mean, we moved into that community 15 years ago. We didn't have kids yet. Our realtor said, "Oh, don't worry, there'll be a school here in a few years. You guys will be great." We moved. There still isn't a school there. But I said to my wife, I said, how can we make this better for our family? What are the things I could do to jump in here to make things better? And so we had a little community association. They did great work. They did fun little events and things like that. So I joined. Just raised my hand. I went to the AGM and just said, "Hey, I'll join." I joined as the director at large, and very quickly I suddenly became the director of events. And so that meant just doing silly things like we had an Easter egg hunt here where I'm in Calgary, Alberta. We do Stampede breakfast. So Stampede's the big rodeo that everyone knows about. So the whole city, all quadrants of the city, have Stampede breakfast all the time. So we threw one in our local community, free pancakes and sausages, and just roughly, about 500-600 people would come out on a Sunday morning. And so I ended up taking that on, and all of a sudden that just led to other things and other things, things. And so what I got from that though is just so many connections, so many friends, so many leaders that I got to engage with and fed back into my private and personal life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what else resonates with you?
So I'm very active. Even though I'm come across this chipper, I don't drink coffee, and it drives my wife crazy that I'm this high energy at all times. Like I've had a bottle of water so far this morning, and my wife's like, "How do you function? You don't even have a diet coke or anything." And I went, "No, I just get up and go." So I'm a very active person. And so, as much as like I would like to sleep, I also like to just be busy. I like to be doing things. So, reading a book is great. Watching the latest show on TV, awesome, but I would rather be planning something. I'd rather be doing something. So we had Earth Day here, April 22nd. I just ran a community cleanup in my neighborhood. Just I put up on Facebook, said, "Hey, I'm going to go stand out in a field with some garbage bags and gloves." And 15 people came out and joined me and picked up garbage in the neighborhood. And it's just like, "Mom, so what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. We used to do this in the other community. It's really easy and the low barrier to entry. Let's just go do it." And so I did.
That's amazing. Um, we talked about, you've touched about it a little bit already, but what's your view on relationships through service? You talked about having friends and meeting people throughout the region and just what that looks like. Do those become deep, meaningful relationships, or are they just kind of like, "Hi, I kind of know you"?
So I would say it's a little bit of both because it's a
Okay.
two-way street. In the community association, I was on the board for 10 years before we moved. So 7 of those years I was a regular board member. The last 3 years I was served as president. So as president, you're going to all the committee meetings. You're meeting many more community members. A lot of the emails come directly to you. And so I would say that one of those things that leads to is that all of a sudden you're at the grocery store, you're standing in line beside someone, the person goes, "Oh, hey, I know you." And you're like, "Well, I don't know you." And you have that quick conversation in line at the grocery store. But I also found that on the board, being as president, one of the first things that I did, having been on that board for a long time, was I asked my board to think bigger. I want you to start thinking about bigger events, bigger proposals. What are the things that we can do to drive our community? Because we're a pretty small community in Calgary, we're like 1,300-ish houses. What can we do to get bigger? And why I say that is I wanted to have a fairly diverse board, meaning that I didn't want a lot of folks looking like me sitting around a table looking at each other. And we have a very ethnic city. So we have lots of people from diverse backgrounds, different experiences. So what this brings me to is one of my board members was a lovely East Indian business gentleman who, to your point, I didn't have a really deep connection with. Like, he came to the meetings, we were very friendly, I knew him. And then one meeting, I don't know what happened. I think we just got caught together putting away chairs. And I said to him, like, "What did you do before you came to Canada?" And he said to me, "Oh, I was a fighter pilot." And I went, "Excuse me? What do you mean? You've been sitting here for 9 months with me, and you're like, I need to know about this. I need to know more." And that turned into a great relationship. I just like, he's probably 20 years older than I am. But that turned into something like it just opened up my flow. Like, holy smokes, I don't know this gentleman's journey. I don't know where he came from. And I have lots of things like that. So one of my best friends was my VP. Again, we started out as strangers. Now we're going on vacations together, even though we don't live in the same community. And so I look at those things and kind of go, we have East Indian festivals. We have the Chinese Cultural Society ended up doing something in our community. And I look at all those things. That's stuff that just doesn't come if I sit at home and watch Netflix all night.
Oh, okay. You're speaking to the choir on that one. So very cool. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've received a couple distinguished awards for your community. The King Charles III Coronation Medal for service to Canada and the Queen Elizabeth II, hang on,
Yeah.
Platinum Jubilee Medal for service to Alberta. Well, first of all, congratulations. That's
Thank you very much.
amazing. How does that happen? Like, what does that look like?
Okay, well, so for first off, just so everyone listening knows, complete utter shock to me and a surprise. So the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, and I know you have a very international podcast, so Canada still ties to the monarchy in England. The Queen had served her 75 years, and so Canada came up with these volunteer medals. I was nominated by my member of the Legislative Assembly. So that's our provincial government representative. So, if you think of the state, a state senator would sort of be a representative, sort of similar. So he had nominated me and a few other members of my board for just our dedication, being on the board for a decade, impacting our community and our quadrant of the city. Complete shock. But was really exciting. So we got to go down to a government office in downtown. Lovely ceremony with about 50 folks because there's a number of nominees from across the province. Got a lovely medal and a presentation added to a website and whatnot. So I was just utterly shocked because I certainly don't do volunteering for awards. That's not why I'm here. I love the odd, coffee and muffin dropped off. That's great. But we're certainly not here for awards. The second one came as I had no idea. My board actually went to my member of parliament, which of course is our Canadian representatives, and had said like, "Hey, he'd won this award previously. You have this new award, which is the King Charles Service to Canada." That actually went through a vetting process. So there's a good number of people in Canada got it. I believe it was about 30,000, but mostly uniformed service members, police, and EMTs, things like that, and of course political. But in the private sphere, it's a fairly small number. So I was very flattered to be nominated, let alone actually receive the award. So I got to go down to my MP's office, and unfortunately in Canada we just had an election. So I teased him. I would have loved a free flight to Ottawa and get to go to our state, our country capital, but that was off the table because we're in the middle of election. But very, very flattered to win that award, and honestly something I take a lot of pride in. It's just one of those things to know that someone is watching, even when it feels like maybe they're not.
Yeah, that's awesome. So again, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
huge. All right. With all that, in 60 seconds, why do you volunteer?
All right, 60 seconds. So I volunteer to make a difference in the world. I have two young daughters who I know are going into a world that's ever changing. I want them to see the positive signs of life. I want them to know that they can make a difference. That was what my parents taught me. And I want to make sure that when I lay my head to rest at night, I know that I can make the world a slightly better place. I'm not gonna, end world hunger. I'm not gonna make peace in the world, but I can make my little corner of the world a better place, and that really makes me happy, and it really, really drives me.
Awesome. All right. You work for, is it TELUS Canada?
TELUS Communications.
TELUS Communications.
We just call them TELUS in Canada, but yes.
Okay.
TELUS.
All right. So tell my non-Canadian listeners about TELUS.
Okay, so TELUS is one of the three big telecommunications companies in Canada. So, if you think of some of your big ones, I'm not going to mention them by name, but if you ever watch a Sunday football program and watch the
You've seen
commercial,
them
you know
all.
exactly
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. So Canada has three of those. TELUS, the one I want to work at, is the one that's based primarily out west, although we are a cross country service. The neat thing about TELUS is it's a place that really actually reflects my values. So TELUS is considered the most giving company in the world. In May, we have TELUS Days of Giving, where the entire company is encouraged to get out and volunteer. Every single employee, right from the entry level first jobs all the way up to the CEO, are expected to get out in your local community and give back. So I did that twice last week. I went out to a youth shelter, and I also did some Meals on Wheels with my wife. We went and gave back to help that out as part of work, which is great. So just a neat little add-on. But I like the fact that we actually reflect that back into the community. So yes, we're a business. We're here to make money. We're on the we're on both stock exchanges. You can find us. We're a big multi-billion-dollar company. But at the heart of it, there's a lot of give back, and that really reflects my personal values, and it's something I take a lot of pride in, knowing that I work at TELUS.
That's awesome. So, what we've had actually Meals on Wheels on the podcast before. What
Yep.
was what was your highlight of delivering those meals?
So okay, so I'm going to say two things. So my wife was a military brat. Her father was 35 years in the Canadian military, and so the first thing that jumped at us was the military logistical precision. They gave us a map of the things where we had to go, in what order, exactly what was going to happen when we got to the person's door, whether it was ring the doorbell or knock or call ahead, or maybe give them 1 minute because they may have reduced mobility. So you're going to knock and don't just leave. Like, just give them a second; they'll get there. And it was to the T. Like they knew every single thing that was going to happen. But 100% meeting the folks at the door. It's a really neat experience to have folks there, and because we were sort of stepping in on a weekend, we were doing the weekend delivery. We weren't the regular drivers. They have very regular drivers. So a couple of the folks, hey, you're not my regular person.
Oh,
And it's like, no, no, we're just helping out for the day. Maybe that person needed something else to do today. And my wife was a geriatric nurse for a long time in her career. Loved having those conversations at the door. So just meeting those folks, having that quick little 30-second to 2-minute check in, and that's one of the neat things about Meals on Wheels. They don't really advertise it, but it's a nice quick little check in to make these folks are okay at home, and that might be their only social contact for the day. So it's really important.
that's awesome. All right, kind of building off of there because I think this is a good tee off for it. In all your years of volunteering, it could be the Meals on Wheels or anywhere else of hockey, community
Yep.
associations. Can you share a story of impact? Something where you saw you giving your heart to a person, an animal, an organization, where you saw that direct impact.
Yep. So I thought about this question when you had put it on the sheet earlier, just to make sure I had something to think about. And so one of the things that jumped out at me, this was an interesting one. So right before COVID, we had a local United Church in our community, that had a great meeting space, but wasn't being used. They just didn't have a great outreach, and they came to us and said, like, "Hey, what can we do? Like, you're the community association, you're out here with all these community members. What can we do?" And I said, "I don't know, but we can figure something out." And randomly at a separate event, we had the Chinese Cultural Society came to me and said, "Hey, we're looking to do a seniors event, and we have nowhere to host it." And they were about 10 minutes away from our community. So they weren't really close, but I said, well, you know what? I've got a great spot that I think I can meet you up with, and I can probably get you some seniors. So, what we ended up doing is we ended up connecting the United Church, the Chinese Cultural Society, and we, as the community association, ended up sponsoring Wednesday senior get togethers. Now, I want to say this went live about fall of 2019. So of course,
Oh,
spring of
okay.
2020, it had to go immediately on pause. And it was one of those things where we saw immediate feedback of like people like they were really missing this in the community because it was a really neat thing. Yes, it was the Chinese Cultural Society, but that had nothing. You didn't have to be Chinese to show up. Anyone was welcome. It was 55 plus event. Now, at that time, I'm in my early 40s, so I would just go to drop off muffins and coffee and whatever and quickly say hi. But they were doing Tai Chi, they were doing Bollywood, they were doing square dancing. They were doing games. And the reason it was really important to me is it was one of the first things that came back post COVID because so many people asked for it. And it was one of those things where, like, I never thought I'd be connecting a church and a Chinese Cultural Society and a seniors group and going, hey, here's a thing that has no impact on me. Like, let's be honest, I have nothing to do with this. But to know that there was 40, 50, 60 people every week looking forward to this event and had missed it because that come together of the community and get together. So it's one of those things I'm really proud of. It's still going today, which I'm happy to say. And it's just one of those things I look and go, these are the kinds of things you don't think about. Like, again, I would never think of, oh, why would I worry about organizing a seniors get together? But then to know that that's impacting a lot of families in my neighborhood, just it really makes me happy.
I love it. I absolutely love it. The just the way you bring them together and the greater purpose. And some of my listeners already know that I have a special place in my heart for like the active aging centers for that
Yep.
next generation or the previous generation, however you want to word it,
Yeah.
and just the impact that it has on their whole social, mental, the well being, and to
Yes.
hear that they're having fun while they're doing it, that's incredible. Okay, now it's time for my favorite question. Okay, can you share a blooper? Now, a blooper is not something that necessarily went wrong, it just didn't go as planned. And what did you learn from it?
Okay. So I've got two that jump to mind really quickly, and they're both short, but I will give them both because they're both when I was a director of events. I wasn't quite the president yet of the community association. So the first one was here in Canada. We of course love our hockey. I decided to start building an outdoor rink. So we built it with 2x10s and a fire hose. The city provided us the fire hose. We got a handful of volunteers, a bunch of old guys. We got out there and we just slapped together a 2x10. It was 40 feet by 90 feet rink, and we flooded it. So after the first year, we figured it out, worked great. So of course it goes away in the summer, comes back in the fall. So then I had the great idea as the director of events is we should have a winter festival because one of the challenges in Canada is it's very cold and we don't get out and do a lot of things together as a community. So I said, let's challenge it. Let's do a winter festival. But the challenge was we had a lot of things to organize. So I said, let's get a water truck to ice the rink quickly. And I don't have to worry about doing the fire hose the night before. I got a million other things to do for this festival, along with the other volunteers. And so I woke up about 8 in the morning, went down to the rink, and if anyone has ever frozen too much water too quickly, you'll know it'll get a top sheet of just frozen ice on the top and then water underneath. So I had roughly 400 people coming to my rink with unskatable ice.
Oh, all right. So, what'd you learn from it?
To make sure that you don't change the things that work right before you do an event. So we did end up scraping it off. It was a lot of labor. We physically scraped off that top layer of ice and got it reset before the event. And I had about 8 people out there just soaked
Oh,
doing that, but we got there. And then the other one, which I think may resonate, especially if you're listening to this for volunteers. So one of the other things we did was an Easter egg hunt. So we used our local church, and when the weather was great, we'd actually have the Easter egg hunt out in the field. So we'd have a soccer field that's pretty adjacent to the church, and it was really neat. We had about 500 of those little cheap plastic eggs you get, and we had letters inside them. We asked the kids to spell out Easter, come back and get a little gift bag. And so the plan was we're gonna throw these 500 eggs out, watch the kids go. It's hilarious. They go all over the place, and it's great. Woke up that morning, and it is pouring raining. And we go, uh-oh, we cannot send all these kids out in their Easter finest
no.
into a muddy field. So we quickly asked the church, like, hey, can we pivot into your sanctuary? And so we had our volunteers hide the eggs in the sanctuary. I want to say that was 8 years ago. They're still finding eggs. Uh,
No. They hit him really well.
they're still finding them behind curtains and on shelves and under chairs and all sorts of places. But it was one of those things where we had to pivot really quickly. Like we had this event planned, we knew what we were doing. We had craft stations, we had art stations, we had little candy giveaways, all these wonderful things centered around this main event of going outside into the field, having the kids go out there. And all these families coming. And I was like, quickly, how do we pivot? How do we get this? And I was like, you know what? You just make do. You make do. You make it work. I'm sure if you ask any of those families, they would have had no idea that was even the plan. Oh yeah, no, they were just doing it in the church this year because it was raining. But it is pretty funny. I've talked to the local minister. She's like, yeah, we're still finding them. Uh,
I love it. That's awesome. All right. Travis, thank you for being my guest today. But before we finish our conversation, I'm going to give you the mic. I
okay.
want you to love on your favorite volunteer partner or the people you serve, or maybe there's something we didn't cover that you want to share. Love.
Okay. So I wanted to take a second to call out the people who let me do this, and that's my family. My wife and kids are the flip side of that. So when I'm out doing things in the community, they're at home. My wife, I had young kids at this time. They were pretty little. They're 10 and 8 now. And I've done this right through when they were born, all the way through. So, if I'm out doing a community cleanup, that's time away from my family. If I'm out getting an award, which is awesome and flattering, that's time away from my family. So my wife has supported me in all this. She knows that it fills my cup. She knows that it's something that's just part of my DNA and it's not going to go away. But she also supports me in it, and it's really important to me. I'm modeling this for my kids. I want my kids to have sort of the same passion and drive that I do for it. And so I look at it and kind of go, this can't happen without her. It just can't. So without her support, without her, saying, yeah, go do it. Yes, I know you're crazy. I mean, I was at an AGM last week for a hockey association. She's like, why are you going to an AGM in May? Like, there's no hockey. I'm like, I know, but I have to go. Uh, I got to go over there and vote and voice my opinion and do these things. And, um, you know, hockey coaching is roughly 100 hours, right? Between being on the ice and making plans and talking to the parents and working with the manager and planning tournaments. Like, it's a lot of time that I'm sitting at a laptop doing Excel. That's not work I'm getting paid for.
Right.
Right. It's, she understands work is work, but and so that's what I would call it. Is my wife's my partner in life. She supports it. She came with me on the Meals on Wheels. We had an absolute blast together. But that's who I would call out. I love the volunteering. I love all the friends I've made, all the things that I've done. But at the end of the day, it's about my family, and that's why I do a lot of these things. But it also helps because they help me do it.
Ah, I love that. I've just enjoyed our conversation today. So, again, thank you for being my guest. I also want to thank my listeners for sharing this time together. I ask that wherever you listen, if you would rate and review the episode, because it really does help others hear about stories like Travis's and the impact that they're making and how together we are transforming the fabric of our society through volunteering. So, again, thank you. And I will see you next time on the Art of Volunteering. Have a great day. Bye bye.